Hello there, I am Sleepy Tunes, and I am here to help you. I know you use this video to fall asleep, so please, like the video and subscribe. Also, what time are you watching and where are you from? Now get comfortable and enjoy the tales. The first time Clara heard about Ashridge Hollow, it was nothing more than a footnote in a true crime podcast. A woman's voice, calm, steady, almost bored, spoke over rain sounds and low piano music. In late October of 1996, for hikers entered Ashridge Hollow in upstate New York. Only one returned. The official report lists exposure and confusion due to hypothermia, but locals have other theories. That one line stuck with Clara. She listened to the episode 3 times before she even noticed the host's name. Something about the story, a girl named Rachel, the cold autumn wind, the broken radio call made her stomach tighten. It wasn't just the mystery, it was the silence. Something had gone deeply, terribly wrong in those woods. Clara was a grad student in journalism at NYU, barely sleeping, surviving on caffeine and nicotine patches. She was writing a thesis on missing persons in national parks, something broad and easy to source. Ashridge wasn't even on her original list. It wasn't federal land. It didn't appear on official search and rescue databases. But it called. To her, the deeper she looked, the less sense it made. There was one news article, now archived behind a paywall, that referred to a botched operation and wild weather. No photos of the victims, no interviews, just one grainy photo of a ranger standing beside a fire engine. No bodies had ever been recovered. When Clara brought it up to her thesis advisor, he shrugged. "I wouldn't waste your time," he said. "Urban legends, misreporting. You dig deep enough, you'll find the whole stories, smoke and mirrors." But Clara had already found Rachel's brother. His name was Lucas M. Waters, and he worked at a hardware store in Myhopark. He hadn't given any public statements in years, but his number was easy to find. When Clara called, she didn't expect him to pick up. "Hello." His voice was hoarse, older than she expected. "Hi, is this Lucas?" A pause. "Who's asking?" "I'm a student journalist. I know this is probably unwelcome, but I've been researching Ashridge Hollow and..." I click. She stared at her phone. He had hung up without another word. But he hadn't denied who he was. 2 days later, he called her back. "Meet me at the Golden Lantern Diner," he said. "No introduction. Sunday morning, don't bring anyone." The Golden Lantern was just off Route 22, an hour and a half drive. Clara didn't sleep the night before. She arrived early, hair tied back, eyes bloodshot. Lucas was already in a booth, hands wrapped around a cup of black coffee. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in years. "I'll tell you what happened," he said. "But you don't print my name, and you don't go back there, ever." She nodded. He spoke for over an hour about the cold, the way the woods shifted, how compasses spun, how Rachel had screamed something he didn't understand, how the trees had closed. "I don't know how to explain it," he said. Staring past her, the map stopped making sense. We walked north for an hour and ended up right back at the creek, like a loop. No, like something didn't want us to leave. Clara pressed record halfway through. She couldn't help it. His words were too vivid, too strange. "There was a light," he said quietly. "Not a fire, not a flashlight. It was low, like fog that glowed." It whispered. She didn't interrupt. After that, the others were gone. First Erin, then Kayla, Rachel was last. She screamed. I turned around and she was just ... gone. Lucas pushed the coffee away. When I got out, I walked for 2 days. I don't remember it. The rangers found me lying face down in the gravel. My hands were frostbitten. They said it was trauma, that I'd imagined the rest. Did you? He didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his coat and pulled out a small, battered notebook. The pages were yellowed. The handwriting was tight and slanted. Clara opened it. Each page was a journal entry from Rachel. Lucas left without saying goodbye. Clara spent the next 2 days poring over Rachel's journal. The entries started innocently, enough descriptions of the woods, the group's mood, bits of college gossip. Rachel was 22, a senior at SUNY Purchase, and the trip had been Erin's idea. The 4 of them, Rachel, Lucas, Kayla, and Erin, were close, tight-knit in the way only young people on the edge of adulthood can be. They'd planned the hike as a last adventure before graduation. Ashridge Hollow was obscure, quiet, and according to Erin, practically untouched. The trail was barely marked. The forest was dense. The air, Rachel wrote, smelled like rust and moss and something else. Something she couldn't place. On the second night, she heard something outside the tent. It wasn't an animal. It was slow, steady, like footsteps, but off. As if whatever it was had too many legs. I woke Kayla, but by then it was gone. She laughed it off. Said I was dreaming, but I wasn't. Clara read that line a dozen times. She could feel the shift in Rachel's writing after that. Her entries became sharper, sentences clipped. She wrote about Erin hearing whispers, about Lucas arguing with Kayla over the map. How none of them could agree which direction was north anymore. Then the strangest entry yet. Kayla said something is watching us. I believe her. I didn't see it, but I felt it. There's a presence here, just beyond the trees. When I looked too long at one of the birches, it blinked. I swear it. That night, Clara couldn't sleep. Her apartment suddenly felt too quiet. Every creak of the pipes made her flinch. She tried playing music. She smoked a cigarette by the window. But the image lingered, a tree that blinked. The next morning, Clara took a train to Mahopac and rented a car. She drove to Ashridge Hollow. She told herself she was just scouting, just getting a feel for the place. The trailhead was barely marked. An old wooden post with a faded sign, Ashridge, 3.1 me. Someone had spray painted over the word welcome with a crude red X. The air was cold, still. Her boots crunched over dead leaves. The deeper she went, the quieter it became. Even the birds seemed hesitant to sing. At exactly 1 mile in, her phone lost service. She paused. That's when she saw it. Something hanging from the branch of a crooked tree. It was a scrap of fabric, frayed, sun-bleached. She climbed up to examine it. It was nylon, maybe part of a jacket. Maybe from someone like Rachel, or another hiker. Or ... She heard it then. A whisper. She spun around, but no one was there. Just trees. Just silence. The whisper had sounded like her name. She left. She practically ran back to the car. Her heart didn't stop hammering until she hit the main road again. That night, she dreamed of a birch tree with veins. It breathed. 2 weeks passed. Clara didn't go back to Ashridge, but she couldn't stop thinking about it. Rachel's journal sat on her desk like a silent dare. Then she received an email from a burner account. Subject: "You're not done, body. Check the trail again. This time, follow the creek." Attached was a photo. It was a picture of Rachel's journal, open to a page Clara hadn't seen before. But this entry wasn't in Rachel's handwriting. The writing was jagged, frantic. Help us, they're in the water, in the trees, in me. Clara's hands trembled. The timestamp on the photo read, 2 days ago, she had the journal in her apartment. That entry wasn't there. Clara flipped through Rachel's journal again, her fingers tight and trembling. No such page. No desperate scrawl. Just the calm, increasingly eerie progression of Rachel's entries. Until the final one, where she wrote, "If anyone finds this, tell my brother, I love him. Tell him not to look. Don't let him follow." That was supposed to be the end, but someone had the journal, or a version of it, and had written new words. Clara considered calling Lucas, but she knew what he'd say. Don't go back there. He had buried Ashridge, hollow the way you bury a body. You never want to dig up again, but Clara couldn't leave it alone. The next morning, she packed a small bag, flashlight, compass, waterproof jacket, a printed topo map she bought online. Of the last archived copies that included Ashridge before it was unofficially closed. There was no record of an official closure, just a lack of signage and the absence of any rangers willing to speak about it. She left a message on her roommate's phone. "If I'm not back in 48 hours, call the cops. Tell them Ashridge Hollow." Then she drove. The trail was colder this time, grayer. The trees seemed to lean in. She passed the spot where she'd found the red fabric. It was gone now, no trace. The branch it had clung to looked snapped. Fresh. Following the creek was easy at first. It ran parallel to the trail, gurgling gently over stones. But at a fork in the path, the water veered sharply, eased into a thicker, darker part of the forest that wasn't on the map. Clara hesitated. Then she went in. The sound of the creek changed. As she walked, less water, more whispers, not actual words, more like intent, murmurs inside her own bones. She chalked it up to nerves. After 2 hours, she found something man-made. A tent dot collapsed, mold-stained, half swallowed by the earth. The fabric was blue. Clara knelt, unzipped the flap with her sleeve pulled over her hand. Inside were 2 sleeping bags, a rusted camping stove, and something beneath it, a Polaroid. She lifted it carefully. The film had degraded, but the image was still clear enough for people standing together, smiling. A fire crackled behind them. She recognized Rachel, Lucas, Erin, Kayla, all of them alive, young, hopeful, and behind them, just at the edge of the light, was a tall, thin figure in the trees. Its face wasn't visible. It was just a silhouette, too long, too still, standing, slightly off-kilter, like it wasn't meant to be upright. Clara shoved the photo into her jacket and stood. That's when she saw the footprints leading away from the tent, barefoot, human. She followed them. They led to a narrow ravine. The creek trickled down into it. Cold mist rose up, and in that mist, something moved. A shape, not quite person, not quite animal. Clara crouched behind a boulder, barely breathing. The thing slithered forward on all fours, not slithered, crawled, jerkily, as if learning how to move it. Stopped, sniffed the air, and whispered, "CLAAAR ... She ran. Branches tore at her jacket. Her legs screamed. Her lungs burned. The trees blurred past. The creek vanished. The map was useless. She didn't stop, until the forest thinned and she hit gravel. Her car, she had made a full loop, back in her apartment. Clara laid out the Polaroid, the journal, and the compass which still spun like it had been magnetized. She didn't sleep that night. Instead, she replayed the whispers in her head. The creature, the footprints, the impossible loop. She realized then she hadn't escaped, it had let her go. The dreams started that night. In the first, Clara was back in the forest. The sky above her was pulsing red, like it was bleeding through a fabric veil. The trees were taller than buildings, swaying without wind. In her hand, she held Rachel's journal, but the pages were blank. The only thing written across the inside cover, in massive, wet strokes, was, "You brought ITBACK." She woke up screaming. The next morning, she checked the journal. Still normal, still Rachel's tight, steady handwriting, still no frantic scrawl, or messages written in someone else's hand. But the Polaroid was missing. She tore her room apart. Nothing. It was gone at noon. She got a call. No ID when she picked up. There was nothing but static, then something like a breath, long, shaky. Then, "Help me." Click. Clara dropped the phone. That evening, she went to the library at NYU and searched through old microfiche reels. She found a brief article in a 1996 regional newspaper. 3 hikers missing in Putnam County. There was a small black and white photo of Rachel. It was the only one she could find. The article had no follow-up, but what Clara did find was worse. Buried in a police blotter from 2 weeks later, a body had been found 20 miles from Ashridge Hollow. Naked eyes, missing, unidentified. Female, age possibly early 20s. The case was ruled accidental exposure. No missing persons connected. Clara printed it. Then she found a ranger station number listed for that district. Though the station had been decommissioned in 2001, she called anyway. To her surprise, someone answered, "Yeah." The voice was old, raspy. "Hi, is this the Ashridge Hollow Ranger post?" Another pause. "Depends who's asking." "I'm a journalist. I'm investigating the disappearances back in '96. Rachel Waters, Aaron Kessler." Kayla the man laughed. A single, bitter chuckle. "You don't stop, do you people? I'm not a conspiracy theorist, if that's what you mean. I've been there. I saw something." Silence then, quietly. "What did it say to you?" She didn't answer. "Yeah, that's what I thought. Look, miss, I was there when they brought the boy out. Lucas, I saw his hands. You know what frostbite looks like." She nodded, though he couldn't see her. His skin was split, all the way up the fingers, like something had opened them, delicately, not torn peeled, like a fruit. He didn't say a word, not for days. When he finally spoke, he asked if we'd closed the mouths. We thought he meant caves. But now, the line crackled. "You're not the first to go digging, you know. Others came, Redditors, YouTubers. One girl tried to livestream a midnight hike. She stopped broadcasting about 40 minutes in. Nobody found her. Did you look?" Another bitter laugh. "What's the point of looking when it moves the trail?" Clara leaned forward. "What is it?" He didn't answer right away. "Don't know. I don't think it's one thing. I think it's many, wearing a skin. Sometimes a tree, sometimes a friend, sometimes you." The call ended. That night, Clara checked the journal again. Another new page, different ink, different handwriting, it read. "We warned you not to follow. Now we see through your eyes. Thank you for the map." She dropped the book and backed away. The air in the apartment had gone cold. The shadows seemed to ripple. Her reflection in the window blinked and she hadn't. Clara stayed at a motel that night. A cheap one on the edge of Yonkers. The kind with buzzing light fixtures and a vending machine that only took exact change. She left her phone off. She left the journal behind. In her apartment, locked in a drawer. But when she lay down on the stiff mattress, she found a folded piece of paper beneath her pillow. It was notebook paper, yellowed, the same kind as Rachel's journal. On it, in the same frantic script she had seen in the Polaroid email, were 4 words, "It's learning your name." Clara left immediately. She drove all night. Her hands gripped the wheel so tightly her knuckles ached. She didn't know where she was going. She just drove north, toward the woods. Toward the last place this had made sense. She reached Ashridge Hollow just before sunrise. The forest was still. This time, she didn't bring a bag, no gear, no camera, just a flashlight and a Zippo she hadn't used in years. She walked past the trail marker, past the turn in the creek, into the thick, cold underbrush, where the air smelled like copper and rot at the collapsed tent. She found the Polaroid again. It was pinned to a tree with a rusted nail. She took it down now. There were 5 people in the photo. The new figure stood just behind Rachel. Its face was obscured by shadow, but Clara could see its fingers long and jointed wrong, like broken twigs wrapped in wet cloth. The fire in the background looked wrong too high, as if it had been added later and was burning backward. She kept walking. The forest twisted. The light never quite changed, even as hours passed. Trees leaned in. The ground shifted. She found a shoe once Scalar's maybe, then a hair tie, bleached pale. Finally, she reached the clearing. It was circular, too perfect, as if carved by machinery or worse, something organic. Something massive in the center was a stone well. Ancient, no bucket, no rope, just a black hole in the ground and the sound of breathing rising from it. Clara approached. A voice floated up, double quotes, Clara, ... Clara, please, ... help me, ... Rachel's voice, and then, overlapping it, Lucas's. Get out now. It's copying us. A third voice, her own, let me in. The stone around the well began to bleed. She staggered back, heart hammering. All around her, the trees began to whisper in unison. We see you. She dropped the flashlight, ran, but the forest didn't move as it had before. This time, it wasn't trying to confuse her. It was guiding her towards something. She broke through a clearing and found herself back at the tent. But now it was standing, new, bright blue nylon. A campfire was lit beside it, flames dancing in, a wind that didn't blow. Sitting around it were 4 people. Rachel, Lucas, Scalar, and all. Of them smiling, pale, still. Rachel looked up. You made it, she said. Her smile did not touch her eyes. Clara stood frozen just beyond the firelight. The figures around the campfire stared at her with impossible stillness, smiles fixed. Eyes glassy like dolls left too long in the sun. Rachel tilted her head. Sit with us, she said softly. Her voice was right, but the rhythm was off. Too slow, like someone trying to remember how speech worked. Clara didn't move. Aaron stood up. You're tired. It's okay now. You're one of us. The words weren't comforting. They were final. Clara stepped back. The forest didn't let her. Branches snapped behind her. Something brushed her neck. The air thickened like syrup. Her breath came shallow, her skin suddenly icy. Kayla rose next. Her hands hung wrong limp at the wrists, bent backward. Her mouth opened too wide. "We waited for you," she whispered. "We left a trail, just like you." Rachel's head turned sharply. "But you came back." A twitch. "You brought the journal. You brought the names. Lucas's copy." Anyway looked up. "You gave it a map." Clara shook her head, but her knees buckled. She fell forward. The forest held her down. The fire hissed louder. Clara tried to speak, but her tongue felt heavy. Rachel's smile widened, splitting at the corners. Blood ran down her chin. "You gave it your voice." The fire blazed higher. Suddenly, crackle, no pop. Just white light. And inside it, Clara saw things. Eyes by the dozens. Floating in black water. Hands pressed to glass that wasn't there. A woman with no mouth whispering from her throat. Rachel reached forward. Her fingers touched Clara's forehead. The forest pulsed. Clara screamed. The world inverted. When she opened her eyes, she was lying in her bed. The apartment was normal. Her books, her laptop, her posters all untouched. Morning light streamed through. The window, cars passed outside. Her coffee mug sat half full on the desk. The journal was gone. Her phone buzzed. A new message. Unknown number. One new video message received. She opened it. The camera shook, grainy and dark. It was night. Trees rustled. In the background, the camera panned across a clearing. Firelight flickered. There, sitting alone by the flames, was Clara. She looked directly into the camera. She was smiling. "You brought me home," she whispered. The video ended. Clara dropped the phone. She checked her reflection in the mirror across the room. The face was hers, but the eyes blinked wrong. Clara didn't tell anyone what she saw. What could she say? That her reflection lagged behind her movements. That the forest had followed her back, like a stain on her mind. She stopped answering messages, skipped class, slept with the lights on. But the thing was patient. It didn't need to rush. It just waited. She could feel it watching through mirrors, glass, screens. Anywhere there was a surface to mimic her face. She kept the windows covered and every reflective surface turned. Still, in quiet moments, she'd catch her own breath, fog a screen, and the shape on the other side wouldn't do the same. It had learned enough to be her. That's what terrified her most. It didn't want to kill her. It wanted to replace her. And maybe, in small ways, it already had. The first time she found herself humming a song she didn't know, she brushed it off. But when she woke up one morning to find her shoes muddy, her nails filled with black soil, her pillow stained with wet leaves, she understood. Whatever it was, it had taken her for walks at night, borrowed her, worn her. Rachel had warned her. Don't let it follow. Clara started recording herself when she slept. Just a voice recorder at first. Then video. The first night, nothing. The second night, at 3:12 a.m., a creak. A single floorboard. The third night, breathing. Slow, steady. Not hers. By the sixth night, Clara watched herself rise from bed at 3:47 a.m., walk to the mirror, and stare. She didn't blink for 10 minutes. Then she smiled and whispered, "She's almost ready." The next day, Clara drove back to Mahopac. She didn't call Lucas. She didn't need to. He was waiting for her. Somehow, he knew she'd come. He opened the door without a word and let her in. His apartment was sparse bare walls, no mirrors, newspaper taped over the windows. He looked even older than before. His hands shook slightly as he lit a cigarette. "It marked you," he said. Clara nodded. "I thought I could forget," she said. "I thought if I left it there, you never leave it there." He exhaled, a thin stream of smoke. "It learns, from us, through us, every step, every word." The journal was just a start. Clara sat across from him. "I need to stop it." Lucas stared at her for a long time. Then he reached under the couch and pulled out a heavy leather-bound book. It wasn't Rachel's. This one was thicker. Older inside were sketches, field notes, old letters, even police reports dating back to the 1930s. "The Hollow's been claiming people for almost a century," he said. "Maybe longer. They always come back wrong. Quiet at first, then not at all." Clara flipped to a drawing that froze her blood. A shape, tree-like, rooted, but its center was open like a torso split wide and filled with hundreds of staring, human eyes. "They called it the mirror root in some reports," Lucas said. "Something buried, ancient, and hungry. It lures, it mimics, it studies." Another page names scrawled down a column, each crossed out, except one. Her name. Clara, written last. Uncrossed. Why me? Lucas looked away. "You heard it. You listened. That's all it needs." Clara felt the weight of it on her back, in her breath, in her reflection. "I have to go back." Lucas's head snapped toward her. "No, that's what it wants. Then I'll give it what it wants, but on my terms." She returned to Ashridge Hollow that night. Lucas came with her. They didn't speak during the hike. The trees seemed to part ahead of them now, eager. The air was thicker than before, moist, warm, pulsing like breath. It smelled of sap and rust and old teeth. They reached the clearing just before dawn. The well was still there, but now something moved beneath. Its surface, a low, wet slither, like a tongue-licking stone. Clara stepped forward. Her reflection rose in the water, then smiled. Lucas grabbed her arm. "Don't speak." The reflection frowned. The air shuddered. All around them, the trees whispered, "She knows, she knows. She knows." Then came the voices. Familiar, dozens. Rachel, Kayla, Aaron, her own. "Let us out, let us in. You'll feel better soon, it's quieter inside." Lucas pulled a silver object from his coat. A lighter, then a small flask. "Turpentine and cedar oil," he said. "Old hunter's trick." He poured it in a circle around the well, lit the edge. A wall of flame flared up. The forest screamed. The well churned, frothing black water that hissed and sizzled at the fire's edge. Clara leaned close to the flames, shouted into the void, "You don't get to wear me. You don't get to keep my name." And then, from the shadows, her voice answered, from a second Clara, standing just beyond the firelight. "I already do." The creature wore her skin like a second attempt at being human. It stood in the tree line, just beyond the firelight. Same face, same clothes, same nervous flick of the wrist Clara didn't even know she had. The only difference was the eyes. They weren't wrong in shape or color. They were wrong in intention. The thing behind them wasn't mimicking her. It was claiming her. Lucas lit another flask and tossed it, the flames erupting between them. And the doppelganger, the thing, didn't flinch. It only cocked its head and began to smile. Slowly, precisely, like it was remembering how we need to finish the circle. Lucas shouted. Clara dropped to her knees, pouring the rest of the turpentine in a ring around the well. The flames hissed and surged, carving a boundary the forest didn't dare cross. Yet for hovering just outside. The blaze. "You're so tired, Clara," it whispered, and its voice was exactly hers. "Why carry the weight of the forest when I can hold it for you?" Then it twitched, stuttered, jerk. Like a puppet catching a nerve, and a dozen voices screamed from its throat at once. Lucas grabbed her arm. "We have to seal it. Say the name." "What name?" He didn't answer. His eyes went wide, because behind the false Clara, the trees were moving. But not like wind. They were folding inward, trunks bending unnaturally, coalescing into shapes. Human shapes, unfinished, twitching, writhing. The lost Erin, Kayla, Rachel, and more hundreds. Shambling things of bark and bone and blank-eyed mimicry. There. "The memory it can't digest," Lucas muttered. "It copies them, keeps them close, in case it needs to wear them again." The false Clara stepped into the flames, but the fire didn't touch it. It passed through, sizzling slightly, flesh blistering, but it smiled through it. Clara turned to Lucas. "You said I gave it my voice." He nodded. "Then maybe I can take it back." Clara stood and stepped toward the well. Inside, the black water churned. Faces swam below, the surface distorted, flickering like candlelight underwater. They screamed silently. She raised her voice above the roar of the flames and shouted, "You don't belong here." The forest went silent. The doppelganger flinched. The shapes in the trees froze. "You copied me wrong," Clara continued. "You don't know how to be me. You only know how to echo. You're nothing without a mirror." The thing's smile dropped. She took a deep breath, then screamed, "I reject you." The world pulsed. The well cracked. Lucas screamed as the fire surged skyward. The clearing folded inward, the trees buckling, moaning like dying animals. The shapes in the forest screamed, voices tearing through 100 stolen throats. The false. Clara dropped to her knees. Clara ran toward her double and grabbed her by the face. The skin shifted, like fluid. For a moment, she saw her true reflection, not just her face, but her thoughts, her fears, her pain. The thing had fed on all of it. And now, starving, it begged, "Please, don't send me back." Clara's eyes burned. "Then let the others go." The thing blinked up then. For the first time, it looked afraid. Behind it, the forest began to scream and burn. When Clara awoke, she was in the woods, but they were quiet. No whispers, no twitching trees, just early morning birdsong and a soft breeze through the leaves. Lucas was gone. The well was a ring of scorched earth. The forest looked normal, not healed. But still, she stood and began walking. The trail felt solid beneath her feet. The creek ran clear. When she reached the trailhead, the sign had been restored. Ashridge Hollow 3.1 Mino Red. X no graffiti. Just a path. She looked back only once and saw herself, not a reflection, not a mimic, just Clara. And then she left, back in the city. Weeks passed. She deleted all the recordings, burned the last of the journal pages, but sometimes, in quiet moments, she swore she heard a faint echo in her breath. And when she looked into her mirror, truly looked, she could no longer tell if the eyes that stared back were waiting or watching. Clara tried to move on. She deleted her files, ignored the nightmares. She even took down the blackout curtains, let sunlight bleed into her apartment for the first time in weeks. But something in her body had changed. It started small, a tightness behind her eyes, a buzzing in her teeth. Then the peeling began. Tiny flakes of skin from her palms, like paper-thin bark. It didn't hurt at first, just itched. But the itch grew deeper until it felt like it came from beneath the flesh, inside the muscle. One morning, she found strands of something black and stringy coiled under her nails. Not hair, not thread, root-like. She vomited in the sink. The bile smelled like mulch and iron. That night she woke up at 3:47 a.m. Again, and this time, she was already standing. She was holding something, a jar inside. A human molar, blackened and cracked, floating in viscous amber fluid. Bits of something, white nail, fragments, clung to the glass. She screamed and dropped it. The jar shattered. The tooth hit the floor with a soft, wet thud. She ran to the bathroom, splashed cold water on her face, looked up and saw something in her eyes, not a reflection, not her doppelganger. Something looking out. From behind her irises, it blinked twice, opposite to her own blinks, and smiled with her mouth. She started cataloging her changes, recording them in a notebook, skin, dry, peeling in sheets from fingertip size, pupil dilation in darkness, but irregular, sometimes hexagonal hair, clumping, knotting into thick, bark-colored cord's teeth, one missing on waking. No blood, no pain. Then came the smell. It followed her, no matter how many showers she took, like rot under forest floor, wet dog fur, decaying mushrooms, and something sharp metallic, like blood that had been left out too long. Her co-workers avoided her. Strangers turned away on the subway. A child cried when she sat beside him. She'd become wrong, and everyone sensed it. Clara found herself drifting, losing time. She'd wake up standing in doorways, in hallways, once in a supermarket bathroom with her hands submerged in a mop bucket, smiling into the mirror, but she never remembered getting there. On the third week, the dreams came back, but they were no longer dreams. They were memories, not hers. She saw the original, Rachel alone in the woods, her arms covered in bite marks, mumbling names over and over like a mantra. She saw Aaron, jaw unhinged, crawling into the well. She saw Kayla nailed to a birch tree with her own femurs, and Lucas in a cabin, carving his own name into the wall with a rusted spoon, again and again and again, until the spoon snapped and his hand kept moving, carving flesh. Each night, Clara woke to new bruises, new scratches, once to a tooth in her mouth that wasn't hers, flat and wide, like it belonged to something herbivorous and prehistoric. Then, one night, the mirror spoke. No preamble. Her reflection looked at her and said, "There's not enough of you left." Clara stared. She tried to look away, but her reflection kept looking. The real her blinked, shook. Panicked, the thing in the glass didn't move. And then it whispered, "Let me finish it." Clara threw a chair into the mirror. It shattered into shards shaped like teeth. Each piece whispered as they hit the ground. She swept them up, sobbing, hands trembling, skin sloughing like wet paper. She didn't go to work the next day. She didn't eat. She just sat in the hallway outside her apartment, staring at her locked door, afraid to see what was still inside. She got a text from a number she didn't recognize. No words, just a photo. It was her standing in Ashbridge, hollow, smiling, holding hands with Rachel behind her. A wall of trees twisted into the shape of a human face. Its mouth was wide open, and Clara was stepping into it. The photo burned itself into her skull. Clara stared at her phone until the screen dimmed. Then she sat for hours, unmoving, heart pounding like it was trying to escape her chest. She hadn't taken that picture. She hadn't been in the woods since the fire, but the time stamp said otherwise. Taken at 3:47. A .m. The same hour. Every time, she turned the phone off and pulled the SIM card. It didn't matter. She knew the photo was real, not in the way pixels are real, but in the way invitations are. A reminder, a welcome back. She called Lucas. The line rang, and rang, then connected. Heavy breathing, but not his, then a voice. Slow, croaking, like lungs full of mud. You left him here. He burns every night. He screams your name into the roots. The call ended. She didn't try again that night. Clara's dreams went beyond memory. They became instructional. She saw a field of faces flat against the soil, staring upward, mouths full of moss and teeth. They spoke as one. Let the bones return. She watched herself, in perfect third person, kneeling in a circle of stone, prying open her own chest. Not bleeding, just opening, like bark splitting to reveal something growing inside. It pulsed. She pulsed, and from that pulsing core, something whispered in her voice. You were a good shape. She woke to find her arms ringed in red indentations, not cuts. Teeth marks too small to be human, too wide to be animal, as if something had tried to gnaw its way in, or worse out. She went back to the woods. She had to, not with resolution, not with courage, with resignation. Ashridge Hollow had never been a place. It had always been a process. You didn't visit it, you became it. The path was different this time. Not overgrown, inviting soft ground, open canopy, as if the forest was ready, as if it had been waiting. She passed the old tent, again now pristine, and inside it, the thing she feared most, her own journal, not Rachel's, hers. The cover was black leather, to clean. She picked it up with shaking hands. Inside were entries. She'd never written yet, every word was hers. They spoke of things she hadn't done yet. Today, I dug up the bone field. I recognized the molars. Lucas has been split. One half cries, the other laughs. I asked the well for permission to come home. It said I never left. She flipped to the final page. Her name, written 100 times. Then a single sentence, only. One version of you leaves. Behind her, the trees creaked, not from wind, from weight. She turned. Dozens of versions of her stood in the trees. Different clothes, different ages, different wounds. One had no mouth. One had bark for skin. One dripped roots from her sockets. They all smiled, and in perfect unison they said, "We chose you for a reason." Something broke in Clara. Not mentally, physically. Her spine shifted. She screamed as it arched inward, ribs cracking, as if her own skeleton was shedding her. She dropped to her knees. Fingers clawed at the earth, not hers. 1,000 fingers, all around her, reaching up from the soil, pulling her down. She fought, screamed, bit her own hand to stay conscious. But something had been planted in her since that first visit, and now it had ripened. The mouth in her stomach opened. It whispered, "You're ready now," and then everything went dark. When she awoke, the forest was still quiet, empty, except for her and the others. They stood around her in a circle, eyes closed, hands held. The ritual was complete. She was no longer Clara. She was a vessel, a shell filled with awe of them. And beneath her feet, the forest pured, satisfied, The first thing Clara noticed was the silence, not just around her. Inside her, the constant buzz of thought, memory, fear, it was gone, replaced by a stillness so perfect it felt violent. She looked down at her hands. They weren't hers. The skin was translucent, veins dark and sluggish. Her fingers trembled, then twisted slowly, curling backward at the knuckles, like a dying spider. She couldn't scream. Her throat was gone. No, not gone, replaced. She could feel the echo of her voice, like it was stored somewhere deeper, lower, rooted. She tried to move, but her limbs responded later as if waiting for approval from something inside her. That's when she heard the chanting, a low drone, not language. Not quite, like hundreds of voices remembering how to speak. She turned. The ring of Clara's around her remained still, but their mouths were open now, teeth exposed, black soil leaking from the corners. Their eyes rolled back, revealing but sclera. They were speaking her name, over and over, Clara, 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 Clara. The trees began to lean inward, their trunks split, groaning open like doors. Inside each one, more Claras, some screaming, some laughing, some with no faces at all. She tried to stand, but her legs gave out with a crack. Her knees bent sideways. Her bones no longer obeyed anatomy. They folded like wet paper, and then it came forward from the well. It didn't climb, it rose. A column of tangled limbs and mouths, stitched together with hair and tendons. It had eyes, but not on its head. They lined its ribs, its fingers, its spine. And at the top, at the peak of that grotesque structure, was her face, upside down, rotting. Grinning, the monster wore her like a crown. It spoke in all their voices. This was always the ending. Clara tried to crawl. Blood pulsed from her fingertips, slow like sap. The ground beneath her breathed, exhaling sweet rot. Then the thing lowered itself, its many arms folding in, its mouths closing in harmony, and it whispered, "You were never Clara. You were always us." She woke in a hospital, at least it looked like one. Everything white, clean, bright. Too bright. A nurse stood nearby, smiling gently. "Ms. Moreno, can you hear me?" Clara nodded, though her body still felt wrong. "You were found in the woods. Severe hypothermia, minor lacerations. You've been out for 2 days." "What woods?" Her voice cracked. "Ashridge Hollow. Locals found you collapsed by the road." "Lucas," the nurse frowned. "Who?" "My friend. Lucas. He was with me." "There was no one else," she said. "Just you." The nurse turned and walked out. Clara noticed her shadow didn't move when she did. Over the next few days, Clara recovered quickly. Too quickly. Her skin healed overnight. Her appetite returned in hours. The nurses stopped checking in. She never saw anyone else in the halls. The windows never showed sunlight, only trees. Even when it rained, especially when it rained, and at 3:47 a.m. every night, a shape stood at the foot of her bed. Never spoke, never moved, just watched. One night, she stood in front of the mirror in her room. She had expected to see the wrong face again, or a delay, but this time, the reflection was perfect, too perfect. Then it smiled and she didn't. The reflection lifted a hand, pressed it against the glass. Clara backed away. The reflection whispered, "Come home." The mirror cracked her nose. Bled black. She fell. The floor beneath her gave way, not like it collapsed, but like it opened, welcoming her as she sank into it. She saw them all: Rachel, Kayla, Aaron, Lucas, dozens, hundreds, all staring, all smiling. One of them mouthed the words, "It's better this way." She awoke in the forest, naked, covered in moss. Her hands were roots, and from the trees around her, voices began to whisper, "She's finally home." Clara no longer remembered what day it was. She no longer remembered what days were. Time in Ashridge. Hollow didn't follow clocks. It followed the breath of the trees, their rise, their hunger, their bloom. She knew it was feeding season now. The forest had grown quiet, not peaceful, expectant, like something drawing in a long breath before a scream. She moved differently now, not with muscles, with intention. The roots that had become her arms twitched with life of their own, sensing moisture, decay, heat. Her feet sank gently into the soil like fingertips into soft flesh. She felt the pulse beneath the moss. It wasn't her heart, it was the hollows, a single, endless rhythm. Take, where, become, take, where, become. She could still remember her name, sometimes, but it echoed now, like a forgotten song heard through water. One night, if night could still be called that, she followed a sound, a whimper, a new one, something alive that didn't belong here yet. She moved through the trees like smoke, silent, her body reshaped into perfect camouflage skin, gray-green, limbs jointed backward, hair tangled with creeping vines. Then she saw him, a young man, no older than 20, holding a flashlight that flickered and died as soon as her eyes touched it. He was crying. Clara felt something stir in her memory. Maybe pity. But the forest hissed in her skull. No pity, no self, only hunger. Still, she stayed hidden. The boy stumbled, fell to his knees beside the well. He was whispering, "Rachel, please, I came for you." That name, Rachel, it struck something inside Clara, like a match against bone. The boy pulled something from his pocket, a photograph, Rachel, smiling. Clara remembered her. She remembered everything, the laughter, the journal, the moment Rachel screamed and disappeared in mid-sentence. The blood on Lucas's hands, the thing with her face, and now this boy, her brother, a cousin. He had come for Rachel. He didn't know what Rachel had become. Clara stepped forward. The forest hissed, "Stop." But she was no longer listening. Not to it, not completely. She crouched beside the boy. Her form shimmered, shifting into something soft, familiar, human enough to comfort. The boy looked up and gasped, Do you know her?" "Rachel Waters." Clara nodded. "I'm Clara." The name felt foreign on her tongue. "I knew Rachel a long time ago." His eyes filled with hope. "She's here." Clara hesitated, then whispered, "Yes, but she's not what you remember." The forest screamed. Her roots split. Her skin cracked, oozing sap and memory. She was defying it, betraying the process. The hollow began to awaken in earnest. The trees around them moaned. The well began to boil. Faces surfaced in the bark of nearby trunks. Twisted and open, mouthed Clara. Turned to the boy. "Run," he hesitated. "Run," he did. She turned and faced the trees. The others stepped from the shadows. Versions of herself, of Rachel, of every soul the hollow had consumed. They encircled her, their mouths opened, and from them poured a voice, singular, hollow, You were made to open doors, and now you seal them. You have forgotten your shape. You will be remade. Clara stepped forward, arms outstretched. Her body broke and bloomed. Her eyes wept bark, and her voice still her said, "Then do it." The hollow obliged. What emerged from the clearing was not Clara, but it was not the hollow either. It was something new, a thing that remembered itself, a thing that could say no. The first thing it did was kneel and weep. The hollow tried to erase her. It always did. That was the final stage, consumption through forgetting. Once you stopped remembering what you were, the forest could wear you like a jacket. Slip inside. Your name. Speak through your voice. But Clara remembered, and that was a problem, because now something lived inside. The forest that could say no. The boy didn't make it far. He'd reached the trailhead. He could see his car. The road, then everything bent, just slightly. A turn that wasn't there. A tree he passed 5 minutes ago, standing to his left. The road gone, the woods silent. He ran, screamed, and as he collapsed in the mud, sobbing, he heard a voice behind him. Not. The forest stopped. Not. Clara, Rachel, you should not have come. He turned. She stood as she did in the photo windbreaker. Ponytail, bright eyes, but her arms were too long. Her head tilted wrong, and her voice sounded like it was echoing from someone else's lungs. She crouched beside him. You still have a name, she whispered. That's dangerous. Then she opened her mouth wider than humanly possible, and vomited a mass of writhing teeth into the dirt. The boy screamed and scrambled backward, but she didn't pursue. She just smiled. Give me your name, she said. He shook his head. So. She showed him what happened to those who didn't. Behind her, the forest split open, and he saw them. People fused to bark, ribs open, lungs still inflating, faces grown sideways from tree trunks, mouthing silent screams, bones wrapped in root bundles, twitching like caught insects. And in the center of them all, a tree of mouths, huge, towering, dotted its base. Lucas, or what was left of him, split from chest to groin, hanging like a curtain, eyes still blinking. The boy passed out. Clara watched from a distance. She could feel the forest trying to close around her again, trying to rewrite her. But something had changed. She wasn't prey anymore. She wasn't a vessel. She was a wound, a crack in the cycle. She moved through the trees without touching them. Her breath no longer steamed. The hollow couldn't see her. Not clearly, like it was looking at a part of itself it had forgotten existed. She returned to the well it had grown, now a chasm. Wide, pulsing, ringed with teeth and wet stone. It whispered constantly. She stepped to the edge. Inside, movement, not water, not roots, memories, whole lives. It was the hollow's hoard. Every soul it had taken, stored, filed, ready to be worn again. She saw herself screaming, younger, older. One version still bloody from the crash, another already rotting. She saw Rachel, Kayla, Lucas, and others, dozens, hundreds, people, with names no one remembered, people who had simply disappeared. She spoke, not loud, not angry, just clear. You keep us so you don't forget, but you don't understand us. You mimic, but you don't live. The hollow rumbled, a roar without sound. Clara took a deep breath, then stepped into the well. It did not swallow her, it accepted her, welcomed her in. She dropped, weightless. Through centuries, she saw the first tree open, the first mouth, the first name spoken and never returned. She saw Rachel giving in, letting it in, and then she saw something worse. She saw herself, the original, kneeling in the dirt as a child, pressing her ear to the ground, listening. The hollow hadn't found her by accident. It had always been with her. She had invited it. Before she knew what it was, she had been chosen. Not because she was weak, but because she was curious. That was the difference. Clara didn't just look into the dark. She listened when it whispered at the bottom of the well. She landed in mud. Hands helped her up, human, trembling. Real. Lucas looked like hell. Pale, torn, hollow, dash-eyed, but alive. I knew you'd find it, he rasped. Find what? He looked around. This isn't its mind, it's its heart. The well had a heart. It beat around them, slow, wet, heavy, pulsing with names. And Clara understood. If she could stop it from remembering, it couldn't recreate. She could starve it. Help me burn the names, she said. Lucas nodded, and from the mud, they began to pull the names free. Bones, teeth, tinker-nails, scratched with initials, locks of hair, tagged with dates, old Polaroids with smiling faces and doomed eyes. They lit each one. The forest screamed. The well thrashed. Clara bled from her ears. But she kept going. Lucas screamed a name his own and set fire to the final page of a journal. The sky above them cracked. The mouths fell silent. The trees stilled. And the hollow began to forget as the names burned. The hollow began to unravel. Not fast. Not cleanly. It came apart the way a memory decays out of order, in pieces, with desperate resistance. Faces blurred, mouths twitched, trees twisted in place like they were in pain. Clara collapsed to her knees, her lungs heaving with rot-thick air. Lucas had already fallen, his mouth full of mud and ash. Around them, the well beast shrieked, not with sound, but with presence. A pressure in the skull, a vibration in the bones. You are taking our shapes, it howled. We kept you safe, we held your story. But the truth was clearer than ever. The hollow didn't protect. It collected, it stored every version of every person who ever stepped too deep. Like a trophy case, lined with living echoes, Clara spit into the dirt. You kept us because you were scared of dying alone. The ground split. From the cracks rose roots lined with human eyes, rolling in their sockets, looking everywhere and nowhere. Lucas cried out as one wrapped around his leg, jerking him backward. Clara grabbed his wrist. The roots pulled harder. Don't let go, she screamed, but he did. Not in fear, in acceptance. I'm part of it, he whispered. Always have been. And he smiled, not in surrender, but in peace. Then the roots yanked him under. Gone. No scream, no sound, just silence. Clara stared at the space where he had been. She didn't cry, she stood, because the hollow was still there. Weakened, bleeding, but still aware. And behind her, the last names remained. The oldest ones, etched into tree trunks, buried in stone. Some so old they had grown into the forest itself. To erase them would mean tearing out the hollow's roots. She began to dig. For hours, maybe days, she unearthed what had once been people. A child's jawbone, teeth carved with symbols. A scalp still braided with tiny bells. A skull with two faces. One grown backward into the bone. Each artifact screamed when burned. Each scream peeled back more of the hollow's false world. The sky above fractured. into strips of flickering memory, classrooms, basements, hospital corridors, endless rows of trees. The hollow had stored them all. Now they bled from its skin. Clara's own memories started to fray at the edges. She saw herself brushing her teeth as a girl butt in the mirror. Her gums were black. She saw her mother tucking her into bed, but her mother had too many fingers. She saw birthdays that never happened, lovers who didn't exist, whole years unraveling like threads. The hollow was trying to flood her mind with false lives, hoping she'd drown in them. But she remembered the fire. She clung to it, the heat, the destruction, the clarity. She tore a long splinter from a nearby trunk-white wood, soaked in sap, and something thicker. She lit it. The final fire, and she turned to the center of the hollow's heart. It looked like a man, tall, thin, paper pale, but only at first glance. Closer, you saw the skin was stitched from many. Its hands ended in roots. Its face was a shifting mass of almost faces. Not quite Lucas, not quite Rachel, not quite her, just enough to trick you. It opened its mouth, and every voice Clara had ever known poured out. You don't know what you are. You never made sense until we found you. We're your real name. She stepped forward, held up the torch, and whispered, "Then I'd rather be nameless." She drove the flame into its chest. The hollow screamed. It screamed with the pain of 1,000 half-people, of centuries of hunger denied. Its face melted, no longer a face, just bark and mouths and begging. It collapsed, and with it, so did the world. Clara awoke in the dirt. The well was gone, the clearing, just a clearing. Now, no fire, no voices, just wind. Her hands were her own again. Her breath was light. She stood alone and walked out of the forest without it turning her around. On the highway, a trucker pulled over when he saw her. She climbed in. He didn't ask questions, just gave her a blanket and water. She said thank you, and for the first time in what felt like years, her voice was only hers. That night, she sat in a motel room, staring at her reflection. It stared back, no delay, no smile, just Clara. But she still didn't sleep, because behind her eyes, something watched, something waiting, and far away, deep in the hollow's ruined belly. A single root twitched. Clara didn't tell anyone. What could she say? That the forest had tried to wear her like a glove. That her reflection had once whispered her name in a voice stitched from screams. She checked into a motel under a fake name, paid in cash. She stared at the ceiling for hours and waited for her skin to peel, for her hands to bleed moss again. But nothing came, just silence. It was worse than the noise. On the second night, she dreamt of Lucas. He was in the forest, yes, but beneath it, rooted, awake, he had no eyes, no mouth, but somehow he spoke. You stopped the fire from spreading, he said, but you didn't put it out. He lifted a hand. Bark tore from flesh. Inside his palm was a tooth. It pulsed. You brought one of them with you. She woke and vomited black sludge into the motel sink. It clung to the porcelain like tar. When she tried to rinse it, it stuck to her hands, webbing between her fingers like a living oil. She burned the towel she used to clean it. Her skin blistered from the fire that was good. It meant she was still mostly human. She bought a prepaid phone, searched for any reports. Nothing. No missing persons, no forest fires, no mention of Ashridge Hollow at all. It was like it had never existed. That terrified her more than anything else, because it meant it had sealed itself back up. It meant it could do it again. She made a decision. No more hiding. She would become what the Apollo had feared. A witness. She posted her story online. Not as fiction, not anonymously. Her real name. Photos of the journal. The burned Polaroid she'd salvaged from the campsite. She included names: Rachel, Lucas, Kayla, Aaron. She uploaded the audio from her sleep. Recordings, the whispering, the scraping. The moment her voice repeated her name before she ever said it. Then she waited for someone to believe her, for something to stop her. The post went viral, not instantly, but slowly. People commented, emailed her. Some sent their own stories. A man in Montana who claimed his brother had vanished in a forest that closed behind him. A woman from Oregon whose daughter drew pictures of trees with teeth and said she had other moms watching from the mirrors. A retired ranger who simply wrote, "I saw it in 1978. It wore my wife's voice." Clara made a map. She pinned every message. A shape began to form. A ring, not just ash ridge. Hollow, other woods, other sites, all connected, all feeding. Then one night, her email inbox flooded. Hundreds of messages, no subject lines, no content, just attachments, each one a video. She clicked the first. A teenage girl, standing in her backyard, filming herself with a flashlight. "I saw it," she said. "It was in the shed, wearing my face." She turned the camera and there it was, blinking, grinning. Wrong. Clara clicked another. A man sobbing in his garage. Blood on his shirt. It made me remember things I never did. Things I wanted to do. Another and another dot in every one. The trees. Whispered, not just in Ashridge now. Everywhere. Clara understood. She hadn't escaped. She'd opened a path. The hollow hadn't been killed. It had been distributed, like a seed on the wind. And now, pieces of it were rooting in every dark corner of the world where someone looked into a screen and said, "I want to know the truth." The mirror in her motel room cracked. She didn't look. She just whispered to herself, "You told the story." That's what it wanted. Behind her, the faucet began to drip black dot. Clara left the motel before sunrise. No bags, no destination. She walked dot through. Gas stations, back roads, bus terminals. Every screen she passed flickered, just a fraction of a second behind. She felt it in the air now. The hollow, it wasn't confined anymore. It was feral, wild, and spreading like spores in fog. It whispered, to the lonely dot, to the curious, to anyone who asked the wrong question while staring into the dark. She passed a church. Billboard along a two-lane highway. "God sees you." Someone had spray painted beneath it. "So do we." The font matched her handwriting. She kept walking. She arrived in a small town 3 days later. The kind with one diner and 2 churches. It felt normal. It was. Single quotes she could tell by the way the wind blew. It moved in slow spirals, even when the trees didn't dot. At the diner, the waitress smiled too wide. Her apron had a tear at the seam that opened and never closed. She poured Clara coffee that steamed counterclockwise. "You heading to the woods?" she asked. Clara paused. "Which ones?" The waitress didn't blink. "They're all connected." Now Clara left cash and walked out at the town's edge. She found it not a trailhead, just a gap between trees, wide enough to be mistaken for an old logging road. But the moment she stepped through it, the world dropped 3 degrees colder. The soil changed color, gray, dot, and damp, as if something beneath it breathed up. She heard footsteps beside her too. Light to be human, she didn't turn. Are you following me? She asked aloud. Her voice answered from behind a tree. We were never behind you. You walked with us the whole time. The trees opened into a clearing. She recognized it, not from her memories, but from someone else's. The hollows in the center stood a copy of her childhood bedroom. Perfect. Same sheets. Same poster on the wall. Same cracked lamp she broke when she was 12. She stepped inside. Everything was still on the bed. A journal, not Rachel's, not hers. A third one. She opened it. Blank pages. Then one began to fill. Words inked by nothing. Visible, they read. If you can name it, you can hold it. If you can hold it, you can bury it. But if you bury it, it will feed. She flipped the page. Another sentence appeared. We offered you safety. You gave us the world. Behind her, the walls pulsed. They were no longer plaster. They were bark. She was inside the tree. Clara reached into her pocket. She hadn't remembered putting it there. But she found it. A tooth. Lucas still quotes, still warm. She placed it on the desk. It hissed, the walls groaned. A voice, dozens of voices screamed in chorus. You do not command us, Clara whispered. I don't have to. I remember you. That was the only weapon she had. And it worked. The walls cracked. Roots thrashed. A shape pulled itself from the floorboards her again. But with no face, the faceless Clara lunged. Clara stepped aside. The hollow's copy stumbled and began to convulse, because it needed recognition to survive, and she had none left to give. Clara whispered one last time, You are forgotten. And the thing collapsed. The room vanished. The clearing emptied. The forest stilled. But it wasn't victory. Clara knew that the hollow wasn't dead, just starving, and it would whisper again, soon, to someone else who was lonely, curious, brave. Someone like her. That night, Clara wrote one more journal entry. On the final page, she wrote, It doesn't die, it waits. But if someone remembers this, maybe they won't follow the whisper. Maybe they'll walk the other way. She closed the journal, left it under a birch tree, and kept walking into the fog. Not to run, not to escape, but to make sure someone was already there. When it whispered again, weeks passed. Clara wandered the seams of the world, not in cities, not in towns, not in the deep woods either. She lived in in-between spaces, abandoned rest stops, shuttered gas stations, empty parking lots on foggy mornings, places the hollow could glance into but not grip. She kept her pockets filled with matches, salt, and names. Names of the people who wrote to her after she told her story. Names she refused to forget. That was the key, as long as someone remembered. The hollow couldn't take them completely. She wasn't just surviving now, she was protecting. One night, under a buzzing highway sign, she met a girl, 16, shaky, wide-eyed. The girl had run away from home after her brother vanished during a camping trip. She had found Clara's blog, tracked her down, wanted answers. Clara gave her a fake name, then handed her a map. You're going to feel it call to you, Clara said. It'll promise to show you where he went. The girl nodded. But you don't follow the voice. I don't. You follow the memory. Clara watched her go, then sat alone with the dark. And that's when it came back. Not with roots, not with trees, not even with whispers. With an offer, it started in her hands. Her fingers stiffened, skin tightened. She looked down and saw bark creeping across her knuckles against slow patient. Soft pressure in her skull told her this could stop the aches. The running, the watching, will give you stillness, will give you sleep. Just say your name, Shidin, single quotes, T instead. She took out a knife, pressed it to the bark, and carved the word. No, the bark receded. The pain stayed. But so did she. Later, Clara returned to the hollow, not as a victim, not even as a warrior, as a witness. The trail was gone. The trees were thinner. The clearing was smaller. Now, but the well was still there, covered in vines, moss, and forgotten memories. She stood before it, waited, and the hollow spoke again, not loud, not angry, just tired. We are not evil. We are what comes next when memory is lost. You burn what you do not understand. Clara nodded. I know. She knelt beside the well, set down a photo of Rachel, then one of Lucas, then a matchbook, and her last journal, the one she'd filled since escaping. She didn't light it. She just left it. For someone else. You feed on forgetting, she said. But I remember. And then, without looking back, she walked away. The hollow didn't scream. It didn't chase her, because it finally understood. It would never wear her. She was unclothed by fear now, and fear had always been its skin. As she stepped out of the woods for the last time, the world didn't shift. No tricks, no loops, just a breeze, and sunlight, and the sound of her name, not whispered, not mimicked, just real. Her own, Clara, never went viral again. Her blog was taken down within a month. DMCA. Take down with no explanation. The videos were removed from platforms. The accounts that had messaged her, gone, no trace. No forwarding links. When she asked, people said, what post? Even those who had shared it, even those who had thanked her. The hollow hadn't killed the story. It had done something worse. It had forgotten it, and in doing so, made the world forget it too. So Clara did what no one expected. She stopped running. She rented a room in a quiet place, changed her name again, and got a job scanning old records for a local archive each day. She held brittle pages filled with people who had already disappeared, census reports, obituaries, birth certificates with the ink faded out. The hollow would have liked that, she thought, but she didn't. Not anymore. She bought a tape recorder from a thrift store and began reading the names out loud. Every night, every single name. She scanned as if saying them aloud might anchor them to the world. Sometimes she caught the mirror twitching when she did it, but it never spoke again. Then, one day, she saw her own obituary, filed under a different name, wrong photo, but hers. It read, Clara M. Watson, age 32, passed away in 2022 after a prolonged illness. She is survived by no known family. She stared at it for hours. She was 29, alive, but someone or something was cleaning up loose ends. The hollow hadn't just been digesting her, it was preparing to replace her in the world that remained. She made a decision, not for herself, for whoever came next. Clara packed her last journal, the real one, and made 4 handwritten copies. Each one included the true story of Ashridge Holotha, names of everyone she could remember a description of. What to do if you start hearing whispers in trees or seeing your own face blink at the wrong time. She sealed them in Tupperware, wrapped in plastic, and buried them in 4 places. Behind a shuttered ranger station, beneath the floorboards of a burned cabin in a tree hollow lined with teeth, and one under her own bed. She knew what would happen next. Eventually, someone would dig one up, read it, become curious, ask questions, and the hollow would whisper again. Because the hollow didn't feed on flesh. It fed on invitation. Clara didn't cry when she felt the bark return. Didn't scream when her bones began to hum. She just sat in a chair on her porch, closed her eyes, and whispered to herself, "Remember, remember, remember." Then the world blinked, and the trees leaned in, and somewhere beneath the soil, in a dark that can think, a root twitched and smiled. It's been 6 years. Clara Watson no longer exists. You won't find her on any registry. Her birth certificate, school records, even her tax filings, they're gone, like ash in wind. What remains is a string of rumors, a Reddit thread that gets reposted every Halloween, a voice on a late-night podcast, anonymous, but cracked with something real, a forest in upstate New York that doesn't appear on any map anymore, but hikers still whisper about it. Say the trees watch you. Say you can hear your own name if you stand near the old well at night. Say the trail bends. Say you see yourself walking ahead of you, but it never turns around. Sometimes a backpack shows up at the edge of town, full of moss, a journal inside. All the pages blank except one. It says, if you're reading this, you've already heard it. It's not too late, but it will be if you follow. And beneath that, scratched deep enough to tear through the paper, don't give eye to your name. The final thing Clara wrote was found decades later, etched into the inside of a mirror in the attic of a house that hadn't existed before. 5 words, a warning, a promise, a spell. It cannot become what's remembered. The forest still grows. It always will. Not because it's evil, but because we keep asking it questions, keep feeding it names, keep looking into the mirror. Just a little too long, so if you feel something watching you tonight, ... if your reflection blinks wrong, ... if you find a journal in the woods with your name already written inside, ... Don, single quotes, to read it. Don't follow. Don't remember. Walk the other way before it starts learning how to wear you too.